Good evening, everybody. My name is Tracy Philippi. I'm the Library Programming and Outreach Coordinator here in Cottage Grove. Very happy that we have so many of you on the call today on this beautiful Wisconsin evening. We have a very special conversation this afternoon, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our author as well as our moderator. So I'll start with Monica. Monica DeCarlo Coffey is an avid reader, lover of libraries, and crunchy mom of three kiddos. And her friend, Jason B. Dutton, lives in Columbus, Ohio, where he does all he can do to nurture his lifelong love of song, dance, and books. When he's not writing, Jason loves to watch and passionately discuss movies, particularly anything involving Spider-Man. He can often be found singing, whether bystanders want him to or not, and as a writer with cerebral palsy, he delights in finding the humor, beauty, and possibility in a life with disability. So thank you both. So Monica is going to be asking Jason a series of questions, and if there are any questions that pop up for any of you watching this evening, you can put them in the chat and we'll swing around to those at the end. Take it away, Monica.
I think you might have her muted still.
There we go. Good?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's all that matters. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Jason and I are so excited. We go way back. We were actually telling Tracy that we have known one another since kindergarten and went to school all together through elementary school, middle school, junior high, high school, the whole 9 yards. I actually confessed to Jason that I honestly don't have many memories like through school without him. And we joke because in our community in Pickerington, Ohio, the suburbs of Columbus, the DeCarlos and the Duttons were two of like the largest families with the most kids. I do think the Duttons beat us out with one extra kid, but everybody kind of knew us. And Jason and I are the oldest of the family, so of course we got to be the guinea pigs going through school. So kind of solidified that way. I do think that our mothers drove the largest minivans in town for the longest time, and so I'm thrilled that Jason has agreed to join us. He is awesome. I think you guys are going to be just as excited about it. So, Jason, was there something you wanted to start with, or can I just go right in with some of the questions?
Just, thrilled to be here and be invited and contribute. So yeah, if you guys have any questions after Monica and I have our conversation, I'd love to be a resource in whatever way is useful to you. So, and that varies from crowd to crowd. So whatever aspect of this is interesting to you, give me a holler and we'll see if we can't entertain you a little bit.
Perfect. So that being said, and he's not joking or exaggerating about the entertainment. We were talking and he goes, I think I still have a pin. It's a picture from when he and I both starred
Right.
or performed in our high school musical Gypsy. And so he's not joking. He truly is a performer at heart. And that skill comes through with his nature. So the title of his book is How to Dance, quite literally. There's lots of that included through the characters, and I'm sure that's going to come into play. So one of the questions that I think every reader always ponders as they're going through and reading any book is for the author's perspective. Well, what's the inspiration? Did you write this specifically about someone? Are you based on one of the characters? So that first question is like, what's that inspiration? And are you writing for a particular person or a particular audience?
I think I think I write the sort of story that I would want to read. I hope that other people like it too, but I write the sort of things that entertain me. The inspiration was that I had seen a movie trailer for a movie called Me Before You that was originally a book. And because of that trailer, I figured out I was excited about it initially because it's about a guy who gets hit by a motorcycle and so he's paralyzed and they hire a caregiver to take care of him and he and the caregiver fall in love, and I thought that's amazing because we don't get a lot of disability representation on the big screen. And then I did a little bit of research and found out that the end of that book, spoiler alert, is that he opts to commit assisted suicide rather than be with this woman. And that was disappointing on a number of levels. And I said, well, I would love to, that's not the sort of story I would want to experience. And I'd really like to write one that's about sticking around, both because that's more in line with my sort of my ideals when it comes to assisted suicide, but also because I think that story is a little bit more interesting, rather than, life is too hard and I'm giving up. It's like, so what if you chose to stick around? What challenges would you have to overcome? What does it look like to try to live your life and have a relationship in the face of whatever physical challenges present themselves? So that was kind of the inspiration initially. Was I wanted to write a romance about a guy who, before the book had even started, had already opted to stick around. Ending his life wasn't an option. So what was he going to do instead? And then you mentioned the performance background. I mean, I've loved theater and musicals all my life. I've been a mega fan of this theater in Columbus called Shadowbox Live, where the idea of Haley came from. I knew a lot of people like her, and Shadowbox is kind of the inspiration for the Vive Dance and the Icarus Showcase, which are the theaters in the book. So that was my idea. Was I was going to have somebody with my condition fall in love with a professional dancer, and I liked the juxtaposition of the two, given that they have such totally different relationships with physicality. So that's kind of where I started. And no, it is kind of based off of me, but I am not him. And nobody in the book is actually based off of anybody in particular. Not everybody believes me, but that's the stock answer.
Some of the witty banter and the conversations between the characters, I kind of had to stop a minute and I'm like, Jason, are you sure you're not being you at this point? But yeah, so that totally came through with some of that quick witticism,
Yeah,
and some of that dry humor that's also fabulous. So I did
thank
see
you.
some parallels, but I totally
Oh yeah,
get that it's not um, based exactly. So it's kind of fun. It gives you that liberty to be a bit
yeah.
more free.
Well, the
Um,
the the extended answer I give people is that nobody in the book is based entirely off of anybody else. But if you want to know me, kind of as you demonstrated, I'm all over the book with my humor and what I find funny or what I find romantic and my worldview and all that stuff. So all of that comes from my brain. And yeah, absolutely, the back and forth and the banter and all that. It's just, if people were wondering if I'm secretly dating a professional dancer or anything like that, none of that is true.
Shucks.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
Nobody's more
yeah, I
disappointed
know,
than me.
what a letdown. But yeah. And I think that it's always really interesting when people talk about, like, so what was the most surprising process for you in the writing of the book? Did you have a favorite part of it? Did something challenge you? Was there something that you secretly kind of dread a little bit, um, with
Yeah,
that?
the sort of no man's land, the stuff that I discovered as I went along was basically with the publishing, because I've been writing for a while. I've written stuff that just hasn't been professionally published. I went to school for writing, so I never really doubted that I could write a book. The stuff that was really surprising was the, okay, let's how do we look for an agent and how does that work, and the getting an editor and all that different stuff. But as far as surprises in the actual writing, the whole thing was a really joyful experience, really, because I had written a number of things throughout the years, and I went to school for writing, like I said, but my degree is actually in creative nonfiction. So that's like writing personal essays about largely about my life or my condition in particular. So it was nice to have sort of this. It happened very quickly. I saw the movie preview. I was like, I really ought to write a book. And then like 2 weeks later, I had done a little bit of research and I was off to the races. And it was really great, that feeling of being inspired and having this really finite goal of like, I'm gonna write this book. And one way or the other, even if I don't get it traditionally published, I can still get it self-published and it can go out in the world and I can make a difference. And every day was just, I mean, it's still work, it's still effort that you put in, but every day was really joyous, writing the thing from what I can remember. Yeah.
Now that you've been able to come out of the fog?
Yeah, well, it's been a long time. So I started writing the book in May of 2016, and the first draft took me 6 months of pretty much writing every day. And then I edited it, and then I started looking for agents, which took like a very long time, and like 2.5 years. And then I decided to rewrite the book, and then I was looking for agents again. So when I say like the actual writing of this book is is at least a couple. I mean, the book's been out for a year, the writing has been done for a couple, so it is a little bit of kind of the looking back on the experience with some distance. But yeah, there is all those also that element of coming out of the fog, like you said, like you kind of emerge and look back and realize that none of your dishes are in the dishwasher, and you've been eating takeout food for like 3 weeks. Yeah, it's that thing too.
Um, I do have to note that I am not remotely surprised that you became a published author. I know we did have a lot of more classes in high school together, and those were more your honor track. But I am most surprised at the genre that you selected for this book,
Yeah,
to come out and to write a like romance fiction book, just because you are very cerebral. I very educated and
it's
it
kind of you
comes
to
across,
say.
I think, a lot. I think it comes across a lot in, like, how you communicate, and
Sure.
I hadn't pegged you as that, and I'm sure, just being very stereotypical, there aren't a lot of successful male romance authors,
True.
to that genre, so I'm really kind of curious if you can explain a little bit more about why that path,
Yeah.
do you feel like that'll be the only path, and how do you envision that?
Well, first of all, thank you. You are one of the few people that have described me as cerebral. I appreciate that. Um, yeah, so I mean, when I was younger, my mom used to joke, "Hey, you should write romance novels because they were so successful." And I said, "Well, no, I'd never do that." I think because the supposition is when you think about a romance novel, you think about like flowing script on the cover and some guy with long hair and his shirt's open and the damsel and all that, like a stereotypical mass market Walmart, bodice ripper romance, which there's nothing wrong with that, but that's one of I mean, the genre of romance is so huge, and they have there's fantasy romance, there's Victorian, there's like Bridgerton, right, which is on that thing on Netflix that's become huge. All sorts of different types of that. But I think people have very definite, myself included, had very definite ideas of what a romance book is. When I started out to write How to Dance, I hadn't read any romance. I just said, I want to write a love story. And I had done that in college before. I'd kind of been inspired. I'd seen the movie A Walk to Remember, and I was like, why do I connect so much with this like teeny bopper Nicholas Sparks thing, which not that sort of tragic love story in particular, but I think I've always loved love stories, and I have a pet theory that I think everybody does, it just in different forms. I told you the other day, Captain America is a love story. John Wick is a. There are so many stories that are actually sort of propelled by love of something, someone, or somebody's love of country or something else. So um, I didn't set out to say I'm going to be a romance author, right? That I'm gonna mass produce these paperbacks with the flowing script and all that stuff. But um, I have come to realize that the genre is very big, and I love writing these stories about relationships. And the thing about How to Dance too is Nick and Haley's story is central, but there's also like their individual character development and his friendship with his best buddy. Like there's all sorts of different stuff going on there that's not just I think again, when some people think of romance, they're like, okay, so you've got like 10 pages of them making out or whatever, and then another 10 pages of them dreaming about each other, and then they go back to make it like there's more to the way I'm doing it, I guess. I don't consider this a genre romance as much as I do. I would call it a love story, but that's kind of splitting hairs a little bit, if that helps.
That's very much a splitting of hair. I love all romance books, so all of you that are on here, if you need any recommendations for anywhere across the spectrum, I got you.
You've covered it
So
all,
yes,
huh?
all of it. I love it.
Okay.
This is my favorite, so I was super stoked when you published it. I was like, "Now this I can get behind." Had you have written a nonfiction, I think that wouldn't I'd have struggled with
Right.
that one.
Thank God he didn't write
So
something boring. Yeah, that is good.
seriously. I could get behind this one.
Yeah.
So yes, and, so with that, we've talked about the genre, but what is your personal favorite genre to read?
To read. I grew up on like mysteries and thrillers. I read all the Hardy Boys books and Sherlock Holmes and then Agatha Christie and stuff. So if I were to pick a favorite genre, it would be a mystery. Um, Having said that, over the years, I've become fortunate through various circumstance, I guess, to read different types of books that I didn't think I would get to, maybe because I was in a book club and they assigned that book or whatever. So my tastes have become a little bit more varied than they used to be. But I'd say if I walked into a bookstore and somebody said, "Okay, pick your favorite genre aisle," it would be a mystery. I've always enjoyed those.
Nice. I also love
Yeah.
mystery books, so I love those too. So tons of recommendations, and you and I are
Well, I'll
totally
try
gonna
to
have
write
to
a
get
mystery
caught up.
romance for you. Yeah.
Oh, that's like the best, like merging of both worlds.
There you go.
If
Yeah.
I could request. So yeah,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
no pressure. But that also kind of ties in. Is this something that you're foreseeing continuing writing more books? Again, no pressure or anything.
Yeah, yes. Well, yeah, my I have an agent, and when I when the agent offered me representation, that's the way it works, because when they represent you, they don't make money until you make money. So what they do is they say, when they decide they want to represent you, then you agree to do that. But the conversation we had when she was offering me representation was she wanted to know that I had more than just the one book in the hopper, right? She wanted to represent me for a career. So the idea is to continue writing books. Um, I would love to branch out a little bit and do like a mystery romance or but I think I'm always intrigued by relationship books. I do love stories. And so I think in whatever form that will take, I would say more. I would say in the immediate future, the stuff you'll see from me is more or less like what you see in How to Dance. It's going to kind of be that same flavor. But who knows? I mean, hopefully I've got many years of writing ahead of me. So
And I think that it should be noted for those who are not aware, Jason is writing on the side. So this is kind of
yeah,
his side hustle. He does have a career in professional 9 to 5 kind of job. So the fact that he's been able to be so successful by writing on the side, I think speaks volumes. So I do want to give a shout
thank
out
you.
to that. And to help
Yeah,
inspire anyone who would like to, we bragged on Tracy because she is also becoming a published children's author. So
yeah.
Jason can do it.
That's
Not
right. If I
implying
can do it,
everybody
anybody
can.
can do it.
No, not implying that, not implying that, but just, use him as inspiration. I was trying to allow you to be inspirational.
Hey, you know what? I
Um,
love nothing more. Yeah,
Yes, exactly. So yes, it's an untapped resource.
of
And
course.
I had asked about the if more books were coming, and so that kind of ties into. I'm always curious. What is that writing process for you? Do you talk about it freely amongst other people? Do you keep it in like a tight knit circle and only share details with confidants? That's
I
one of
try to
those
give
things.
I try to give broad strokes to my friends, as far as like it, because that comes up often. Even like when I'm around my family, my siblings are really good with like, okay, so like when I was writing this one, like, how's the book going? And so, and naturally, now that I've published one, everybody wants to know what I'm working on next. And so I'll say like, depending on who I'm talking to, I'll say, yeah, I've got an idea I'm working on, or the one I'm writing right now, I'm actually kind of fleshing it out as I go. So I don't really have a complete thing to even talk about, which, um, so yeah, I also try to keep some mystery there. You don't want to like describe the whole book, right? Because who would want to read it? But there's a thing, when you talk a lot about an elevator pitch when you're trying to sell the book or you're trying to get an agent, and the elevator pitch would be if you're in an elevator with somebody, making the ride up 4 floors or whatever, and they ask you what your book's about, you should be able to condense it to it's about a high school math teacher who's also a karaoke star, and he falls in love with a professional dancer. That's, what, 5 seconds of explanation. So I'll do that. I think I'll do that with this one that I'm working on when I get a better sense of what that is. But I'm not like ultra secretive about it. Um, some of the business stuff, like I don't necessarily share that I have a book deal until I'm like allowed to do that. There are steps to doing that sort of thing. But generally, when I'm writing, I'm pretty open about that kind of thing.
Now, are you superstitious in the like you have to follow it exactly as the first one, your process for that,
Oh,
or as
writing it,
in
not at
to
all.
adapt?
No, no, this is going differently this time around. It's harder, I think, because I'm, well, like I said, I have a day job. So that's part of it, is you're trying to write the book in addition to doing everything else in your life. But also you kind of get in your head about like, well, I don't want to use the same bag of tricks again, and I want this to be as good as the last one, and so on and so forth. So it's been a little bit slower, but I do have a writing accountability buddy. There's a friend of mine that we share the same agent, and we're both working on something. So I'm in pretty much daily. I text her every day now and just go, hey, today I did X number of pages. I before with this book, I was actually doing that on Facebook about once a week. I would post and say, hey, this is day 49 or whatever of my process, and I've written 500 words today, and here's what I did. And I did that all the way from the minute that I decided to write the book for the entire 7+ years of that process, all the way, it was like 3,000 some days, I think, all the way until it got published. I'm not doing that exactly this time, but it's helpful to have some sort of accountability. Um, for me, it helps me be productive because I'm like, well, I got to tell her I didn't write today. If I don't write today, I have to fess up to that, which is kind of embarrassing, so that helps.
Everybody needs a little bit of checks and balance in their life, so
That's
that's good.
true.
You have some
Absolutely.
accountability, an
Somebody needs to rein
accountability
me
buddy.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they have their work cut out for them.
Yes.
So, um, and I think one of the questions too is there anything I don't want to use the term regrets because I don't like that word, but is there anything that in hindsight you wish you would have changed about this first book? Or do you feel comfortable and you stand behind it because it was such a long journey in its creation?
Yeah, I don't, the only regret I had nothing to do with the book itself. The regret I had was when I decided to write the book, I hadn't read any romance. So I read one Nora Roberts book to prepare. And the mistake I made was that Nora Roberts is so removed from what I was doing in tone that I went, well, okay, if she's the queen of romance, then that must mean I don't have a romance that I wrote. I don't must what I write must not have been a romance. And so I spent a significant amount of time trying to market this book to agents without calling it a romance before I at some point I asked for feedback from a fellow author who told me that that was actually a contemporary rom-com, and that the genre was so big. So that was the one thing that slowed me down. But as far as regrets, like I was listening to the audiobook of this the other day, just cuz, and because I'm egocentric. No, because I love my own work. No, it's sometimes it's nice to have something that you've already listened to on in the background or whatever. But my point is, like, I don't have any issues with this book. I don't think I made, now I do think, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine not so long ago. It's like, if my goal is to be a better writer than I am now in 5 years, it stands to reason that I would look back in 5 years and go, oh, well, here are some things I could have done differently in this book. But that's kind of the definition of improving, right? But right now, no, I think this book turned out wonderfully. Everything from cover to the to the epilogue, I guess.
Yes. So I love a good dedication page.
Okay.
And so when you look in the dedication page for your book, it is dedicated, I'm opening it, to Mom, Dad, and Uncle Philip. You always knew I
Mhm.
would dance. So does this correlate with kind of a why you chose to become an author?
Yeah, a little bit. The my uncle Philip Gerard, I mentioned him earlier, I think. My mom's brother was the head of the creative writing program at the University of North Carolina in Wilmington. And from the very as soon as I mean, for all of my life, really, he was my role model for what it meant to be a capital W writer. Like, he had published some a couple of novels and some nonfiction stuff. He was huge in his field, and he passed away. It was like it was literally he passed away like 2 weeks before I got a book deal. He read an early draft of the book and offered really, I mean, he was always such a champion of mine, but he offered like extensive feedback on that draft and got to see a version of it, and it was always very supportive. But I don't know, I would have he's in the acknowledgments too, and I would have done that regardless. But since he had passed away before it came out, I thought it would be appropriate to dedicate this to him. And mom and dad were kind of a no-brainer just because they've always been supportive as well. But yeah, what was the question in regard to the dedication? I kind of lost the thread there a little bit.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That has nothing to do or doesn't reflect the conversation that we may or may not have had before this.
I just get
Just
with my sound of my own voice, I get distracted.
no, just kind of I love a good dedication, and so
Yeah, yeah.
how that tied with who was your inspiration and why you came. So you answered it all.
Yeah,
You did
would have
great.
been my Uncle Philip pretty much. And
Yeah,
my
yeah.
parents have always been supportive, and then you always knew I would dance as a reference to I how dancing has several meanings within the book. So yeah.
Yes, very nuanced.
Hmm.
That's that fancy word again.
That's right. Yeah,
Um,
you're helping me up my vocabulary. This is good.
so when they're included in the next book. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah. My next book is called Nuance. Yeah, I didn't.
Ex I would totally buy it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so whenever authors are kind of like trying to get their book out there, and you talked about going through, I know Bookstagram, Book Talk, like those are huge components right now. One of the individuals on our call, actually, she is big on Bookstagram.
Okay.
And so just kind of, do you find that that is integral to everything? Do you find it helpful? Um, do you wish you would utilize it more? Do you wish you wouldn't? How do you feel about that?
I have a slightly complicated relationship. I mean, so we talked about this the other day too. I was born in '83, which they call that the Oregon Trail generation, where like we grew we like email hit when we were in junior high. So like I know how to use technology, but I also know how to like read a map or use a phone that's connected to the wall. So it's something that can be useful, but not something that comes naturally to me. And there are days when I felt like, boy, I wish I was more on top of this, because look at all the people that are really utilizing this. But also I think you really have to be true to who you are as a person. And I felt like if I were to go 150% ahead on, boy, I'm really going to be a book TikToker. Like I don't think that's my speed. My agent said something really perceptive. She said, some authors use social media, some don't at all. It might be helpful to you as you see it as an extension of your job. And that was very helpful, because then I could get on and say, okay, today on Instagram, I'm using this to market my book. And if I can create positive content along the way, I'll do that. But I'm not going to overextend and try, because I know people personally who are so much more skilled at making a cleverly edited and presented minute and 30 seconds on what I have a good friend who has I guess a bookstagram account, right? So
Mhm.
she posts about what she's been reading, and like I'm always impressed with the way that she presents that, because my brain doesn't work that way. If you see a video from me, it's usually just like this, like me talking to the camera, because I'm old. But so I don't resent it, but I don't embrace it either. I try to use it the best I can, but I also don't want to overextend myself, because I think that'll do more harm than good. I have to trust, I even have a friend on this call who is very good about she's posted pictures of my book in libraries. You find that friends will promote your stuff if they like it, and hopefully those friends are more active on social media than you are, and it all kind of, it works to my favor. So yeah, that I use it when I can.
Yeah, I know that there are several authors like I just follow, and so I anxiously await whenever they have new books that are publishing and for
Oh
updates that
yeah.
way. And I love when authors recommend other authors.
Oh,
To
of
me, I
course,
feel
yeah.
like, yeah, do you love that? Have you gotten to experience that?
Yeah, I will say that's maybe my favorite part of social media is, for all I just spent, kind of making fun of it, it does make it easier to create and maintain relationships with other authors that maybe you wouldn't be communicating otherwise. Um, like there's a friend of mine that I met at the Columbus Book Festival this year named Lauren Kung Jessen, who also writes romances, and she has a Substack and a newsletter, and she always has very well curated social media posts and stuff like that. So it is a really nice way to keep up with what other authors are doing. I've met and made friends who are also fans of mine through social media. So it is a valuable way of connection. It's just kind of, it's like anything else, any other tool really is this. It's kind of how you apply it, right? So it
Yeah.
can be very useful. I do get a little bit intimidated because a lot of these people, not to be stereotypical, but romance being predominantly written by women, and women, I think, being better than I am at the visual, like the almost digital Pinterest board aspect of like putting together posts and stuff. I'm like, oh, that looks lovely. The book's right next to your coffee cup, and there's like a flower, and I'm just over here like hoping that the picture I'm taking isn't blurry, and that I remembered to like floss before I take a picture. So I feel not as equipped as some of these immensely talented ladies are, but it can be fun to keep up on what they're doing and connect in that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, I was gonna say I'm kind of shocked that you don't have Katie or some of the nieces and
Oh, like
nephews.
curating it? Yeah.
Yeah,
She'd be
exactly.
good.
Like, is it
She'd be good.
you're supposed to tap into that sibling, like, that's why we have so many of them.
That's true.
And
That's
so
true. That's the only reason. Yeah. They had
the only
me, and then
reason.
mom's like, he's gonna need a support system. So they just, yeah.
This is what I tell my siblings at least.
Sure. Yeah.
And so with that being said, I had asked and I it's always that, "Did all the family read it? Have you asked them if they've read it?" Like,
Yeah.
what did they say?
They all liked it. Everybody read it. I think Katie, my sister Katie, thought it was within her sisterly responsibilities to give me a bit of a hard time. Not book quality wise, but just I think everybody liked it. Everybody was genuinely impressed with what I did, and everybody has been supportive the whole time. I think one of the family running jokes is, when they hit a certain whatever part of the book, and they'll give me a little bit of grief about like, oh sure, yeah, Nick's definitely not you. Oh, absolutely, yeah. And then because they see something that's similar to the way that I would act or something like that. But everybody loved it. Yeah.
Good. How could they not? I mean, geez.
Well, they had the
Um,
good sense to not tell me if they hated it. That was
that's what really matters.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and so I know that the whole publishing, anytime I follow an author, like publishing is kind of like the taboo word. It's viewed very much as being the greatest hurdle, the greatest challenge moving forward.
Hmm.
Um, what about that process do you want to share with us? What was the most frustrating? How long did it take? What are you not looking forward to about that process for the next go around?
Yeah. Yeah, the so from day one when I started writing, people I kind of alluded to this, but I announced my intention to write on Facebook, and then every week after that I was updating my progress. So people got invested pretty quickly, and almost immediately people were asking me like, well, why don't you self-publish? And the answer to that for me specifically was, it was a very specific goal. I wanted to say that I had somebody else deem my work good enough to pay me to publish it, instead of the other way around. And you'd pay Amazon to put out X amount of books or whatever. Now, I want to be very clear. There's nothing wrong with self-publishing at all. In fact, it enables you to get your work out there in a way that's much more efficient. I mean, as early as 10, 15 years ago, if I wanted to get my book out to friends and family, I would go to Kinko's and get it bound and do it that way. So like there are self-publishing has all sorts of advantages, and I know people who have been very successful at that. For me, it was very important that I at least try to get it traditionally published just for my own sort of Mount Everest moment, right? I wanted to say that I was a traditionally published author and kind of try to make a career of it that way. The other thing about, so I guess the advantages and disadvantages. The advantages of self-publishing is you can do it quickly,
Mhm.
you have almost complete creative control, and you don't have to worry about finding an agent or an editor. But if you're self-publishing, you're also a one-man shop. You take care of the of everything, of the publicizing, of the getting it out there. You're running that whole thing. And the inverse is true with traditional publishing, where people are doing that for you. I didn't have to worry about things like cover design and stuff like that. But also you have to find an agent, you have to find an editor. You lose a little bit of creative control. In my case, not really, because everybody was on the same page with what we wanted the book to be, but you don't have that same degree of freedom. So I would say to research, as far as advice goes, I would say that there's nothing wrong with either route, but that you should really look into it and just find the one that works for you and then own that. I mean, I'm not looking forward to uh giving the book to my agent and then having her shop it around again, for example. Like that's just a that's kind of a nerve jangling experience where you're just kind of waiting to see if somebody likes it. So parts the kind of selling it part isn't all that fun. But I'm really glad I have an agent. I loved my editor. I loved that sort of creative collaboration. So for me, traditional publishing is absolutely the way to go. But again, I try to be as clear as possible that I don't think there's a hierarchy there. I don't think that you're less of a writer or a person if you opt for self-publishing. It's just a whole different ballgame. So
Yeah, I love that. I believe Tracy just chimed in and she said, don't do hybrid publishing where you pay someone else to actually do the self publishing for you.
okay.
I'm not as familiar with that process. I'm sure that you and Tracy could probably powwow about that.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that people that typically go the self-publishing route don't have regrets. And I also know that people that do the traditional publishing, they don't have regrets either. And
Sure.
it
I mean,
sounds
well,
like you're where
there's
you are.
stuff, there are difficulties each way. Like
Yeah.
I don't have much control over what the what the publishing, I didn't have much control over the publishing company's marketing strategy, for instance, which you would if you self-published. On the other hand, they were responsible for this cover that I would have never put together in a million years. So there are pros and cons, but you really do have to. And I guess maybe a more encouraging way to look at it is, regardless of the path you choose, there are going to be difficulties. They're just going to be different. So don't feel like you went the one way or the other way and then it's going to be like, oh my gosh, I've made a horrible mistake that I can never undo. Like that, I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. No, hey, gotta make it work for you, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's
Um,
right.
and one thing, how long did it take from manuscript to publishing?
I wrote it down at some point from the moment I got the idea to write the thing, which was like May 26th of 2016, to the day it was published, which I think is February 6th of 2024. So
Yeah.
3,200 some days, like the better part of 7 years. Now, like I said, the main part of that, so the real quick summary, I wrote it, I tried to market it, it didn't work as far as getting an agent. And then I decided to rewrite it because I had agents that were interested, just to not enough to represent me, because like I said, they don't make money unless I make money. So when an agent is considering a book for representation, it's entirely possible that they could like you and like your writing and maybe one or two of your characters. But if they're not on board with the book like 110%, they don't take it on, because then it's their responsibility to sort of champion this book to the publishing company, right? So I had agents who said, hey, almost everybody loved Nick Freeman. Like, regardless of the book, people were like, Nick's awesome. So I wrote the book. I tried to get representation. It didn't work. But there were agents that said, hey, if you ever write anything else, let me know. And so I rewrote the book and I went back to one of the agents that really liked Nick. And I said, hey, do you remember me? And she said, yeah. And she read it again. And her name's Leslie Zampetti, and she's my agent now. So that was a year of writing, 2.5 years of looking for an agent, rewrote the book. That took another year and a half because I was going through a bad breakup and COVID hit at the same time. And then I got the agent in, I want to say, November of 2022. A year later, in November of 2023, we had an offer. Oh, that's not true. November of 2021, I got the agent. November of 2022, we get a book offer. And then it took from November of 22 to February of 23 to get a contract hashed out. I signed the contract on my 40th birthday, and then, which is in February of 23. And a year later, the book comes out in 24. So it was a very long process, the majority of which was finding an agent. And thank God I have an agent now. So the next time it's not going to take that long. But that would be the major downside of traditional publishing is it does take a while, and you have to be very fortunate that you find, call it luck or good fortune or divine intervention or whatever you want, but the stars kind of have to align in order for you to find the people that will end up championing you, and that doesn't always go well. So
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, I think that's most of the questions that I had, Tracy had, we
okay.
kind of powwowed before. So a lot of the conversations that we had. Now, my mother, bless her heart, her computer died. And so
Oh,
she's like,
Lisa. Okay.
she sent me a message and I said, do you have any questions? She goes, how is his family? Make sure that he knows I'm sending all of my love and I'm so very proud of him.
I will pass that
So,
along.
okay. So know that that's there.
Yes.
But
I'm sure
yes,
they would all
and
say we love you too, Lisa. I'm pretty sure they would all echo that sentiment. So you can pass that along to her.
yes. But I was going to say, I know we're kind of wrapping up. If anyone else has any questions that they would like to ask, please feel free to drop them in the chats. And I think you've done a great job, Jason, explaining it.
Thank you.
Is there anything that I didn't hit on that I should have?
Um, no, I think it's been a great conversation. One of the things that I've learned is that I've run into a lot of people, because again, they knew I was writing a book, and then the book gets published, and a lot of people kind of casually say like, "Oh, I've always wanted to write a book," and the answer to that is like, you always can. Like, it's always an option. I think people think it's such a monumental thing on par with like being a movie star or something, and in some ways I guess maybe it is, but it's if it's something that you believe in, the good news is all you really need is a writing implement and a piece of paper. You don't need like you don't need sports equipment or a piano or something. You can start writing today. um and then the whole publishing part of it and the editing part of it comes later, but I think I found that a lot of people kind of talk themselves out of this whole endeavor because they figure maybe it won't be successful or people will hate it. My advice to those people would be like, if you want to write, start writing. If it brings you joy, keep writing. And if it doesn't bring you joy, it's okay to say, I'm not into this, instead of just saying, oh, I'm always going to write this novel and kind of hanging on to this thing that you don't really want to invest in. But I guess to be encouraging, it is possible. If you want to take that journey, it's more than possible.
Ugh, I'm just glad that you took the journey. It's not for me. So I'm really glad that you'll just go ahead and put yourself out there and do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it's the
Um,
least I can do for you, really. I mean, if one of
Yes,
us
thank
has
you.
to write a
It
book.
was really just for me. But Katie has a question that she put here in our chat, and she asked if
Yeah,
you read all the reviews. And if you do, has that had any impact on your writing for your current book? Um,
I've not read all the review. I have very quickly learned what many people have told me, which is stick to your good review. Well, some people have just said stay off of Goodreads entirely. But if not that, stick to your good reviews. And I think there's truth in that. Is particularly because, like, after I wrote the book, I gave it to some friends to read over for specific feedback. That means at that point, criticism has a very particular function. Like, I'm trying to make the book better. After the book is out, like in this form, and I'm reading a review, there's nothing I can do. Like, even if I agree with what they have to say, I can't change it, right? And so in that way, it's not productive, I don't think, to read the people that hate you. Um, it's nice to read the people that like you, just because you know the impact your book's being made. But no, I don't read all the reviews. I make a point of sometimes I'll log on and find the good ones for encouragement, but um and yeah, there not that there are a lot of negative reviews. There's always going to be people that love it. There are going to be people that are kind of mixed on it. And then in my experience, there are a handful of people that just really don't like it for some reason. And you realize that all you can do is write the best version of whatever book you can. And and go from there. But like I said, there were times where, like, when I was shopping it to agents and some of them have had the same complaints, right? Or if the people that I gave it for feedback had the same criticism, then that would give me cause to look at it and go like, oh, are there better things I could do next time? But you just kind of have to take that in small doses and figure out where that's useful and when you're just being mean to yourself, I guess.
I love that you said that you use some of those good reviews or those positive reviews as a means of like a pick me up, kind of a if you're just having like a writer's block kind of thing is what I would imagine you would use it for,
Yeah.
or if things are just waning or you need that boost to continue to move forward. So
Yeah.
that's nice that there's something positive that can come out of those reviews. Like truly, that's useful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I hadn't even thought of it in that manner to use it kind of as that tool.
Well, I think the biggest danger you face when you're looking at reviews or audience reactions is if you start trying to write toward what you think they want. Like, if you think you're trying to hit the target of their approval as opposed to writing what makes you come alive. And because other, as you know, in any context, other people's approval is a moving target, right? So you're never going to please all the people all the time. And then if you're writing something that you don't believe in because you're trying to please this person over here, it's not going to end up as good as you like it to be. So you really, it's best to keep in mind what's important to you, and get criticism for the or critique from the right people. Just kind of stay focused on what you're trying to create, and then you can kind of go from there. But there will always be people that don't love your work.
Well, I love that you said that because ultimately it's your name that's on the
Yeah.
book. You're the
Right.
one who has to own it. You're the one who has to stand by what you've written, and what you're trying to convey. So I love that.
Exactly.
And I do want to point out again, it's let me put it in front of the camera the right way. So, How to
There it
Dance
is.
by Jason B. Dutton. There are still a few copies left at 210 Progress Drive here in Cottage Grove. If you need help getting one, reach out to me. I will happily help you. I will send you one. I already told Jason that I'm going to arrange a trip back to Columbus and we're going to have to hang out, mostly because in our household, we love an author signed book. So I
Yes.
have to take mine to him so that he can sign it for me.
Happy to do
Um,
that.
but on the back of his book, he does have his social media information there. So if you want to follow, reach out to him if you have any other questions. Jason is a fabulous human being. He's wonderful. I'm honored to call him my friend. And I cannot wait to see where you go moving forward. So if you haven't
I
asked your
appreciate that.
question or you weren't comfortable with it, reach out to me. I'll forward it on to Jason, reach out to him through his social media opportunities. And Jason, I appreciate you giving us your evening, especially because you are in Columbus, so you're an hour behind. So although for us here in Wisconsin, it's 6:50, you poor thing, it's
Yeah.
7:50. So in
Try-
our household, that's like bedtime.
I'll make
So
it through.
yes.
No, I appreciate the invitation, and of course, it's a joy to reconnect with you. And I feel I'm just as fond as you of you as you are of me. And I take advantage of I really value every opportunity to talk to people about the book and about the process, just because it is a little bit of a weird thing as a writer to feel like the stories that we have in our head are worthy of being put down on paper and read by other people, and then to expect that those people are going to invest their time and their money and their energy in that. So anytime anybody wants to gather and use me as a resource for this kind of thing, it's not something I take for granted. So thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who took your time out to share with us. So, Jason, you're fabulous as always. Have a great
Thank you.
evening.
You too. Have a great evening, guys.
Thanks.